Here's how you see how real my life was. This is what heroin ends up having you look like in the long run and the shit you have to go through. This is just another reminder why I don't want to shoot dope anymore.
What's that, a school picture?
Yeah, with his American flag. You know, he's a cute kid with a normal childhood. You can see that.
Skateboarding, I lived it, I slept it, I breathed it, I dreamed it. From the day that I got my first skateboard to the day I put the first needle in my arm.
Brandon Novak, he had made it to the sort of the top of his game. Whenever you saw Brandon, you're like, whoa! That's really unbelievable for a kid to do that kind of thing.
Drugs came into play. It was such a gradual and slow process.
I found bongs and the roach clips, the little pink bags and the pills.
I definitely knew that he was having problems. He got into the really heavy stuff.
And my life was slowly going downhill. My priorities, my interests faded away. It's something I worked so hard for since probably 6 years old. I said I'm done, and I quit. It was just so easy just to get high. I quit caring, I quit having hope in anything.
That was really the saddest part about Brandon's life. Had he maintained his skating, he could have really made a career out of it.
I have no more responsibilities, so I decided I needed to go out and celebrate. It's so fucking sick, man. I celebrated by quitting my dream.
Sometimes when I would be in bed at nights, I would hear him in the bathroom vomiting. That's how I knew he was into the drugs.
I wake up in the morning, the first thought is heroin.
The kid was tearing my heart out of my body, and I couldn't do anything about it.
My top priority was the cash for the dope.
I've taken him to meetings, to counselors. I bailed him out of jail from Colorado to Texas to New York. No sooner than we were home, he'd be right out on the front street making another drug deal.
She would tell me over and over, like, you're killing me. And I was so fucking selfish.
I was literally going through hell. And I said, God, I'm asking you one thing. Cure him or kill me, because none of us can live like this anymore. The drug dealers were calling and threatening my life. They were going to kill me because he was a drug and he owed them money. They were appearing at my house at night with guns after me. He said, are you Novak's mother? And I said, yes. He said, we want the money. I had to leave him and go somewhere where I would never let him invade my life again. He disappeared off the face of the earth. He was living on the streets. That's how bad it got.
I have nowhere to go, nothing to my name. I knew how bad I was, but the only thing that mattered was getting another fix. And once I got a fix, everything was better again. That's what's sick.
I think he's on heroin, like, seriously. I mean, he's like really skinny and he looks like shit. I decided to take Novak in and try to help him out. I'd give him cameos on Viva La Bam because he had no problem just doing stupid shit. Novak, you in?
Wouldn't have it any other way.
I've been shooting heroin to forget about all my problems. So not only am I overcoming the biggest fight of it all, which is quitting heroin, then I have to deal with all the problems that I've been avoiding and putting off by getting high for 6 years.
He's sitting there lying straight to my goddamn face, like I'm this idiot.
What kind of drugs do you have now? Nothing. Nothing at all.
I hate to be negative, because I'd like to believe him, because he's my friend and I want to believe him.
I don't want to have to fucking pet you down, Brandon. What the fuck is that?
It seriously stressed me out, and just thinking about it stressing me out right now, because it's fucking upsetting, because he's a fucking awesome dude.
I had this book called Dream Seller, and it was an addiction memoir. I had to put it down, it was so frustrating for me. Because here's this book about a guy who knows so much about addiction, and he's just unwilling to do anything about it.
I have hepatitis C, right? And I drink every day like it's going out of style. And it's not fair, man. Not fair to my mother. Who I can tell the truth to and who I can't. This fucking drug called heroin. Now ask yourself, is it fun? Or does it look real pleasurable and pretty?
We are here with Brandon Novak. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to hang out with me for a little bit. I am so amazed by your story and your testimony. When I think of a comeback story, there is no better comeback than this story. So I am so amazed by you. But before we get into it, can we talk about your hand tap for a second? Can you just show me like how dope that is?
Which one? I have a whole
That
bunch.
one.
This one?
Yeah.
Or both of them?
I mean, both of them are dope, but I love this cat one. That is so
Oh, yeah.
awesome.
So, I don't know if you can see it. I'm doing this via my
Look
phone.
at him.
But
Does he have
that's
a name?
Theodore.
Theodore? Oh,
Theodore is my cat. He's still my cat currently today. He's alive. It's a rather interesting story behind Theodore. I was living in a sober living house. I had just gotten sober. I went to a treatment center for 90 days, and from that treatment center, I went to a sober living house where I resided for 1 year. And in this sober living house, it was in Bucks County in Pennsylvania, and there was a park behind our house called Coeur Creek Park, and I'd always been a dog person my whole life, but somewhere along the line, I transitioned from a dog to a cat person. I think because it fits my schedule more. They're more self-sufficient, you know.
yeah.
They're not like kids, as you know. Um, so I would like go. I went from the rehab, then I went to the house, and then I would always walk back in this park. I found this park very peaceful, and a lot of solitude there. And in this park, it was known to be like the park in the area where like hundreds and hundreds of feral cats lived. And
Oh.
they would breed, and then there'd be kittens. So I'd always go back there and see if I could play with them or catch them. And I saw Theodore one day, and he was just really intriguing. He interested me, and he has, you know, he had a lot of character, and so I tried to catch him, and it took me like 2 weeks of trying to catch him. He was a baby. And finally I caught him, and I brought him back to my recovery house, where at the time we were not allowed to have pets.
Oh.
So I'm maybe 3, 4, 5 and a half, 6 months sober at best. I'm living in this recovery house. I'm washing dishes for $6 an hour at a breakfast and lunch diner, and but I feel good about myself, right? Like I know something's different because I'm like showing up early for work. I'm staying late. I'm taking pride in what I do, and getting a real dose of humility, if you will. And I fall in love with this cat. I bring him in my house, and I'm sneaking him in, and he lives in my room because I don't want to get caught. Because if they tell me to get rid of the cat, then I can't put him back out. You know, it'd be a whole thing.
Yeah.
So every day I'd come home, and I'd change the litter box, and then I made vet appointments to get his shots, and for the first time in God knows how many years, a human life depended on me. And that was like, you know, because for so long the abnormal had become the normal. I was living on that animalistic level. There was no empathy, sympathy, or compassion. People no longer talked with me, but they talked to me or at me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for the first time, this cat kind of brought some humanity back into my life. And mind you, I had around 6 months sober, and I took pride in this cat, and it you know, through doing these esteemable acts, I gained this sense of self-esteem, unbeknownst to me, right? I didn't realize that it was happening at the time. You know, they say life is live forward and learn backwards, and I can look back now and see all this taking place, but at the time I couldn't see it. And we got a snowstorm, and a really bad snowstorm, and there was this guy, David, living below me in his own room of the recovery house, and he had relapsed. And he was getting high on heroin, and it was like a blizzard, and they had shut everything down, and the roads, and we couldn't ask him to leave because he would literally freeze to death.
Yeah.
But this place, this sober house, was like my sanctuary. It was my safe haven, and now I know that there's a guy right below me doing copious amounts of heroin, and he can't leave the house. I can't leave. So I download like 12-step meetings, and I'm listening to them on my phone, and I don't want to use, I don't want to drink, I don't want to drug, but I don't want to feel how I feel, because for the first time in a long time, my safe space has been invaded. And I know there's a guy right below me doing a lot of heroin. And I just don't want to feel how I feel. And I'm all of a sudden, the only thing that's open in my neighborhood is this bar right behind my house. And I think to myself, like, dude, I can at least get out of the house. The guy's doing heroin downstairs. I can get away from that, and I'll just go hang out in the bar. And due to my own past experiences, and I couldn't even lie to myself and say it would be different. And I said to myself, I'm like, if I go to the bar, it's not if, it's just when will I have that glass of wine. And when I have that glass of wine, inevitably, you can't drink in a sober home, so I'll be kicked out. And then, again, it's not a matter of if, it's just when I'll be putting a needle back in my arm doing more heroin. And I knew that was going to happen. And normally I still might have, like, rolled the dice. But this time was different because I looked on my bed, and on my bed lied this kitten that was, like, a month and a half old, and he was curled up in a ball. And I looked at Theodore and I said, if I go to that bar and then have that glass of wine, I become homeless. And I can't do homeless with him. And I didn't go. You know, and that cat, theoretically, maybe realistically, has like saved my life, unbeknownst to him and unbeknownst to me at the time. So that's
amazing. I love Theodore. That's amazing.
Me too.
So I think it's important for us to have these little things at first. So let's start from the beginning, and then we'll go back to that because I love what you said, and already you can make me cry. I became a mother in prison, and having a child is what saved me. But I just love that you had a Theodore. So let's start from the beginning here. Professional skateboarder. You were on Viva La Bam, which I was obsessed with. Jackass. You wrote this amazing book. New York Times bestseller. How did you go from this amazing success to living on the streets of Baltimore City? Where did it start for you?
Well, you know, I can't tell you. You know, I hear I'm really big into 12-step programs. I go to meetings on a daily, consistent basis, and you know, and I'll hear people share in those meetings that the moment they took that first drink, that first drug, they had felt like they had found their calling. They had arrived. They found the reason for which they opened their eyes every morning. That wasn't my case. Like, way before drugs and alcohol, I had goals. I had dreams. I had aspirations. And as a matter of fact, skateboarding did for me at a young age what drugs and alcohol did for me, you know, later on down the line. Meaning that you give me that skateboard at the age of 7 and you put me into a room with the prettiest models in the world, I'll not only think that they're waiting for me, I'll think that they're dying to marry me, right? And then you give me that skateboard, and then you give me drugs and alcohol later on down the line. Say, you know, it produces the same effect in my brain. So it's not like I had did that first line, ate that first pill, smoked that first joint, shot that first bag, and felt like this is it. I found my calling. That's not my case. But what I can tell you about is the first time that my drinking and drugging career was threatened. I can tell you about that like I just snapped my fingers. And from that moment on, again, living like forward, learning backwards, I can look back and recognize the synchronicity in life's events that have led me to the here and now, and when addiction actually had its grips in me. And it's really simple now, right? After doing all this internal work, I've learned a lot about myself and what makes me tick and what makes my alcoholism like alive and well or sleep lying dormant. And throughout 13 inpatient treatment centers, I've lost count of outpatients and detoxes. My mother has bought me a plot. People have taken life insurance policies out on me. I ended up on life support for 7 days. Walking into my 13th inpatient treatment center. My worldly possessions consisted of 8 scarves, 2 jackets, 3 socks, 1 stick of deodorant that fit into a bag that doubles my pillow, a needle, a spoon, a restraining order that my mother had just served me to get the fuck out of her house, and 4 cigarette butts that I picked up off the ground. In between all those years, right, from my first treatment center at the age of 17 to, God willing, my last one, number 13 at the age of 35, I was diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic. And all that simply means is that I'm defiant by nature. I hate authority, and I will never, ever, ever, ever fucking conform unless it becomes my idea. Why? Because I possess this job, and this job places me in a lot of positions I don't like to be in. It makes me endure a lot of feelings I don't like to feel, and that job consists of knowing everything. Again, therefore, when you tell me what I need to do, I tell you I need to fuck off, because I know. And after all, my resume stated that I knew some things, right? I did some things at a very young age that people equate to success or happiness that some even dream of doing. First skateboarder endorsed by Gatorade, hanging out with Michael Jordan, touring the world with Tony Hawk, designing my pro model. I'd have a private tutor that goes with. In those movies, Jackass, those movies break box office records multiple times over, and TV shows Evil Bam, and then New York Times saying, oh, they were written a book on addiction. But unfortunately, I had been diagnosed as an alcoholic, which means defined by nature, I hate authority, I'll never conform unless it becomes my idea, paired with the concept that I possess this job that consists of knowing everything. I was heading down a road that no one really prepared me for. And unfortunately, in my life, the only motivating factor that dictates any form of change in my life is pain. I don't change when shit is unmanageable. I change when shit is unbearable. So throughout multiple attempts of multiple treatment centers and sobrieties, walking into that 13th inpatient treatment center, I found myself in the basement of the Catholic Charities Rehab as this 19-year-old tech thumbs through these boxes looking for a pair of used underwear because I didn't have any. And he didn't find them, but what he found was a pair of size 40 women's sweatpants with no drawstring, a woman's tank top, and a pair of size 13 Jesus sandals. Two life-changing events had taken place in the basement of that Catholic Charities Rehab, from which I'd been to 4 previous times. The first thing that took place was that I went from having that job that consisted of knowing everything to coming to the realization that what I know is that I don't know. And that my very best thinking places me in this position time after time after time, despite all those successful accolades. Right? Because with me going from holding that position of knowing to knowing that I don't know, instantaneously and immediately allowed me to become open-minded and willing to follow the suggestions. Because I can't, but clearly you can, because every time I come to this treatment center, you're here willing to help me. So can you help me, right? So now I've experienced a sense of willingness unlike anything I've ever known that existed. And the second thing that happened in the basement of that Catholic Charities Rehab is something was different this time as opposed to the 12 previous times that I attempted sobriety, if you will. This time, unlike any other time, I had finally been demoralized in just such a fashion from drugs and alcohol. I had been beaten into a state of reasonableness that when I sat in the same chair with the same intake coordinator that I had sat in my 4 previous attempts at this same particular facility, what that looked like is she would say, okay, Mr. Novak, your insurance covers 90 days. And I'd say, in theory, 90 days sounds great. But in reality, I'm more like a 45-day kind of fella. I have this woman to do, this job to fulfill, this state to go to. And she'd gently laugh at me each and every time and say, sweetheart, you have no idea. Anything and everything that you put in front of your recovery does not or will not matter because you will lose it. And I would say, well, clearly, I guess you didn't read my resume, again, because my resume states that I know some shit. And then this time, what was different as opposed to those 4 previous times, when she gave me that same offer that she had given me before, I couldn't come back with a counter offer. Because if I said no, literally, if I said the word no, that entailed an explanation. And for the first time in my life, like I just said, I was demoralized in just such a fashion from drugs and alcohol. I was beaten into a state of reasonableness that for the first time in my life, and thank God for this, I was literally beaten speechless. Because again, if I said no, that entailed an explanation, and I couldn't talk. I was so fucking beaten.
I think that's a really sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that's so important when it comes to getting clean, because if it was up to me and someone was like, we're gonna give you 90 days in a treatment center, I would say, fuck you, I don't need 90 days. But for me, I had to be put in jail and then sent to prison, because if it was up to me, I would not be alive. So once I was put in prison, and it's literally I had to sign that plea deal, and I'm pregnant now. I'm pregnant, signing a plea deal. And I'm like, oh man, I just don't want to go. I can't even, there's still a disconnect there until I saw my daughter's face, until I gave birth in prison. I'm like, whoa, this is so I have no idea. This is so beyond what I thought was acceptable. I need to be a better person for her. I had to be beaten through the system. And I had been before, but it was
Yeah.
so different. That moment, that aha moment is so necessary. We need to hit rock bottom. And to our family members, they think we're at rock bottom, but we can get a shovel and we can start digging deeper, you know? So a lot of my subscribers are either addicts or they're loved ones of addicts. So,
Sure.
what would be your advice for the addict that's dying to get out and desperate for help? And I'm just going to give you a two-part question here. What would be your advice for the loved one of an addict that has no idea how to help that person?
Yeah. Well, for the first one, for the addicts who just can't see or picture themselves living a life, excuse me,
Bless you.
living a life that does not consist of a drink or a drug, I get it. All right. It makes sense to me why they prefer and or choose to continue to drink or drug over accept the help that someone may be offering them. I've sat where they sit. I've thought where they think. I've felt how they feel. After 24 years of active addiction and alcoholism, 13 inpatient treatment centers, well, it's kind of outpatient detoxes, medevac, 4 different hospitals, 4 different states, 4 different overdoses. Mother bought me a plot, life insurance policy taken out on me. I had woken up on life support. Now sitting here in front of you, talking to you, after just celebrating 4 years of continuous sobriety, what I say all that is that I don't know much about much when it comes to the world, but the one thing I'm overly fucking qualified to speak upon is this game that people like us play called addiction or alcoholism. And what I do know is that the issue will always be addressed. And this is the 2 ways that it plays out in the end. This is it. And I'm not a psychic. I cannot predict the future. But if you're playing the game that we play, I can predict the future. God willing, you address the issue. You go to treatment. You get your life back. Things you have no idea that exist in life, as you can attest to, I can attest to. Or God forbid, the issue addresses you, and I get a phone call from your people one day saying, thanks for trying to help so-and-so, but they didn't make it. That's the reality of how this game called addiction or alcoholism plays out, and it will be addressed. I promise you, it will be addressed. It's just up to you on what side of the fence you want to be on when it's addressed. So with all that being said, what I say to the suffering alcoholic and addict who's still caught up in active addiction or alcoholism is that we cannot do this thing alone. If I could do it alone, I would not be on this fucking podcast talking to you. I would not be in a 12-step fellowship. I would not have a conscious contact with my higher power that saw fit for me to get sober, because the only way I had a dog in this fight was through that spiritual experience. As you said, and I will back up, is that I am not clever enough to paint myself in this picture for which you find me today. Right? I went from holding that position that I know, that I don't fucking know, my very best thinking has got me here. And for the first time in my life, I walked into a treatment center with no plan. No plan. Because what I learned after doing the internal work is expectations are nothing but unfulfilled resentments. And the number one offender for an alcoholic is a resentment, right? So that means that's lethal. Number one offender, lethal. I drink, I die. So for the first time, I walked in with no plan, right? Because I tried everything. And that lack of plan has produced the best of plans. So what do I say to the person that's still suffering with an addiction or alcoholism is that you can't fucking do it on your own. Left to your devices, you continue to get high and drink, which I understand. So for the first time, or maybe the last time, please reach your hand out, call me, call anybody, and say, can you help me? And get the fuck out of your own way, right? The only thing blocking you from getting better is you, because the drink and the drug is not your problem, it's your solution. The problem is what lies between your 2 ears, your thinking, your attitude, and your behavior. If it was just as simple as physically putting down the drink, the whole world would be sober. But it's not that deal. Why? Because this isn't the problem. This is the solution. Take the solution away, we're left with the problem. Us, our thinking, our attitude, our behavior. So if you simply just put it down, it's not a matter of if you'll pick it back up, it's just when. Why? Because the same alcoholic will drink again, the same addict will use again. So if you allow yourself to get out of your way, if you really want to get better, I can draw you a clear-cut, precise, direct map on how to get you out of your position, and it will absolutely work. I'll bet my mother on it. I'll bet my sobriety on it. I will bet my life on it. It will work provided you stay the fuck out of your own way. Don't go back to the last person you had a glass of wine with, a shot of heroin with, a line of cocaine with, a pill swallowed, a joint smoked. Don't go back to that very same person and say, what should my next move be to better my life? What should the next decision I make be to get myself out of this position that I find myself in? Don't go back to the last person you got high with and ask that person for advice on what your next move should be to better your life. because you're the last person you get high with. You're going to go back to that very same person, which is you, and say, what should I do next to get out of this position? When your very best thinking has you caught up in the grips of active addiction and alcoholism. I could go on for hours about that, but I'm simply just saying, get out of your own goddamn way. Call me, go to your, podcast, whatever. Like, there's ways up and out. You can call me directly at 610-635-9092. So that's what I would say with that. Because it took for me to have that spiritual experience, to have that obsession lifted and desire removed. If I could have done this on my own, I would have. You name it, I've tried it to get sober. I've moved to Paris, I moved to Finland, I moved to London, I moved all over the United States. I've changed women, I've changed homes, I've changed careers. And what I learned throughout a lot of trial and error is that geographical change does not equal recovery, because you can't shake your shadow. You take you with you everywhere you go, right? They talk about triggers. My triggers are when my fucking eyelids open. I can justify why any time, place, feeling, or sensation makes sense to get high over, left to my own devices. And what my own devices looks like is Brandon attends Brandon's Anonymous, Brandon sponsors Brandon, and Brandon becomes Brandon's God. And then for the life of me, I can't understand how I'm back on the corner of Eastern Avenue and Patterson Park letting men blow me for another bag of heroin. How'd I get there? I got there because I possessed that job that consists of knowing everything. I got there because I'm defiant by nature. I hate authority. I'll never conform. Therefore, when you, Miss Sober, tells me what I need to do, I tell you I need to fuck off because I believe that I know. I got there because I walked into my first 10 treatment centers with a closed mind and a closed heart, comparing out, proving a point how I could drink or drug successfully. I was not going to buy with your son. I was not drinking your Kool-Aid. Pair with the fact that this is a factual evidence. This is a factual statement, what I'm about to say. You're diagnosed as an addict or an alcoholic. All that simply means is you've been diagnosed with a disease, and that disease left untreated equals death. You die. It's a fatal disease. That's fucking facts. Look it up in any book you want. But as far as I'm aware of, it's the only fatal disease from which I possess that tells me I don't have a disease. Furthermore, lying to me in my own voice, making me believe the unbelievable. Follow me. Diagnosed with HIV, I'm rushing to the hospital to get medication. I don't want to die. Fatal disease. Diagnosed with cancer, I'm rushing to the hospital to get chemo. I don't want to die. Fatal disease. Diagnosed me as an alcoholic or an addict. I need a glass of wine or a bag of heroin to figure out what the fuck's wrong with you for diagnosing me with said disease. Just as fatal as the first two diseases, but left to my own devices, I believe I don't have a disease because it lies to me in my own voice, makes me believe the unbelievable, and I'll get up from this computer, I'm doing this interview, and I'll go buy a whole bunch of heroin. And the scary thing is that I can make it, I can make it make complete sense to me. So I know that I don't know. That's the long drawn out. And same for the person who caught up. And for the family member, there's not one set thing. It's not like a black and white one size fits all. So what I would say is don't talk to them or at them, but talk with them. Practice some empathy, sympathy, and compassion. And most importantly, go to Al-Anon.
Yeah, I always recommend Al-Anon because I knew how to deal with my own self. I had some sober time. I have 7 years sober now, but I had maybe 2 or 3 years sober, and a loved one in my life was struggling really badly. And I was just like, why can't you do it? I did it. Why can't you? And if he said that to me, I would yell at him and I'd feel attacked. So I was like really frustrated because I'm like, just get sober. And then once I started going to Al-Anon, I took myself out of the equation and I looked at it from a bigger picture, and I was able to see he is you. It's the same thing. You don't want to feel attacked. And I was able to sleep better at night going to Al-Anon meetings. They really helped me a lot. So I kind of want to talk about Bam because you guys are such good friends. And it kind of seems, if I have my facts right, that he is struggling in the same kind of way that you did. And now that you're sober, how do you handle seeing your childhood friend go through a similar struggle that you went through?
Well, as I know, and maybe and some people know, but a lot of people don't, that the disease of addiction does not discriminate. Right?
Yeah.
Yale or jail, the White House or the outhouse, the results are all the same. And today, 1 out of 3 people will be affected.
today in the nation, 350 people will die as a result of an overdose. With that being said, I can't tell you at the time, place, date, or location that he, was diagnosed as an alcoholic or an addict, but he's absolutely struggling. And it's tough because what I've learned, and I work in this field now of addiction and alcoholism and treatment, is that everybody gets a turn in one way, shape, or form. And everyone's process has to be their process. Right? I could tell him all this shit until I'm blue in the face and he can believe it and it can make sense. But as did when he did the same for me, I believed what he told me. I knew that it was probably true, but like my process had to be my process. I had to experience what I had to experience to come to the realization that I find myself in today, which is that I'm powerless over a drink or a drug. And then once I take one, my life becomes unmanageable. But it's not that easy. I can summarize that like in a brief sentence, and it's like, oh yeah, it makes sense. But it's not that way. And I can help anybody in the world, but the people that I'm the worst at helping are loved ones or family members. Because I'm too emotionally invested. I'm too personally connected, and I want to believe that they're different than the stranger walking down the street. So I've tried to help them in the past multiple times, and it didn't really work so well. Or it's I don't like to say it didn't work. It worked exactly how it was supposed to work. Right? His story's not finished yet. My story's not finished yet. So we just kind of have to wait and see where he goes with this.
I think it is hard when it's our loved one or it's our friend, because they don't see us as a knowledgeable person trying to help them. We're just too close. And I think they do need, outside help. So the last thing that I'm going to say, and then I'll let you go. I don't want to keep you for too long. What does a day in the life look like for Brandon Novak now?
What I learned early in sobriety is I love the saying is when I want to make my God laugh, I tell him how my day is going to go.
Yeah.
So last week I was in California all week doing like some speaking engagements, some interviews, and just some promotional stuff. And then I get a phone call. What's today? Today's Tuesday. I get a phone call last Thursday while I'm in California. And it's a family member saying that another family member has had some legal issues and there might be an underlying issue of alcoholism. And long story short, I end up getting this person, situated and ended up flying them on a very impromptu trip to Florida yesterday morning to treatment. So I was not supposed to be in Florida today or this week. I was due to, I think, be in Philly doing other things, but I had to help a family member out and fly him to Philly. So I'm here and I'm doing this with you now, and I have some more meetings today. But generally when I'm home, I wake up, I go to the gym for an hour. Dude, my life, if I give you this play-by-play, is rather normal. It's rather mundane. And the reason why is because for so many years, the abnormal had become the normal. I was living on that animalistic level. I was so disassociated with reality, disconnected from humanity, that I didn't know what it was like, literally, to like get a shower every morning, or brush your teeth, or floss, or go to the dentist, or go to the doctor, or pay a bill, or do laundry. I for the first 30 days of my sober house, I washed my clothes with dishwashing detergent. I didn't know, and they kept coming out bleached. So now, like, I really love going to the grocery store. I love, like, cleaning my house. I love taking care of my cats. I changed the kitty litter box. I bought a bike. I ride all throughout the city. I quit smoking 10 months ago. I go to the gym 5 days a week when I'm home. I have a personal trainer that I work with 2 days a week. I'm heavily involved in, like, my 12-step fellowship. I travel all over the nation and the world speaking. I just got back from Amsterdam and Switzerland, where I went and celebrated my 4-year sober anniversary. Thanks. It's a multitude of things.
I
Right
think
now,
it's funny that our lives now that we're sober, it seems boring to some, but I find such peace in the routine, boring aspects of my life. I love that I have food in the refrigerator and I know the cops are not going to beat down my door. I was a dealer turned addict, turned inmate, turned mother, turned accidental YouTuber. So I know
yeah,
that people are not going to come take all my shit away anymore for selling
yeah.
drugs. So there's
I
such
again, the position that I found myself in is a position unlike anything that I could create on my own. Um, I have a life that I never knew was possible. And I always say sobriety has given me everything that drugs and alcohol ever promised me. I And what's crazy is from 24 years of being an active alcoholic and addict, 24 years concurrent, mine is 1 year, and that was due to incarceration. So that was by force, not by choice, that I remained sober. But for 24 years straight to now 4 years sober, and I can promise you, like, I don't think about a drink or a drug, right? My mind used to look like this. I'm either thinking about it, thinking about doing it, thinking about doing it, or thinking about not doing it, or just simply doing it. No reprieve, 24/7. And now days go by where I don't think about doing it, I don't think about not doing it, and it doesn't even register in my brain. That psychic change is taking place, right? Through that spiritual experience. And I have a life that, like, and I always say this to people that I'm helping. I'm like, if I could give you a little piece of what I had, you'd be like, what the fuck took me so long to do that? You know?
Yeah, we were like in a fog, you know?
Yeah, people now rely on me. My mother, the one that bought me that plot, the one that took life insurance policies out of me, the one that sold 3 homes to financially pay for me to go to 2 different treatment centers, the one that served me the restraining order, the one that at the very end had nothing left to give, and she went to God and said, God, please cure him, please kill him, or please kill me because I can't take it anymore. Called me 9 months into my process of sobriety, and she said, Brandon, she lives in Baltimore, I live in Philadelphia. She said, I hate when you come to visit. And I said, why? And she said, because I get so sad when you leave. I took her on a cruise. She loves Rod Stewart more than life itself. I bought her a first class ticket and flew her to Florida and pulled some strings and got her backstage to meet that man. I've now become a son to my mother, a brother to my brother, a brother to my sister, an uncle to my nieces and nephews. I'm a productive, tax-paying member of society. I'm employed. I'm employable. I'm a business owner. Most importantly, I'm clean and sober. And I'm a fully self-sufficient individual. Right? I don't depend or rely upon anybody except my higher power on a daily basis. Right? And the craziest thing is I don't even think about a drink or a drug anymore. And all that happened from me just admitting that I know that I don't know, and just asking, putting my hand out, and saying, "Can you help me?" Going back to somebody who's struggling.
I am so proud of you. I love your journey. Before you got sober, that was an amazing success, but there's nothing that compares to what you're doing today. And helping other people is just the best thing that we can do as an addict because it takes us out of ourselves. And I just love what you're doing. So I'm going to leave all of your information in the description box. This is going on YouTube and then potentially my podcast. We haven't started it yet. So if you don't mind, I would love to put your phone number in the description box as well as the Be the Light campaign and everything else that you are doing.
Yeah, I'd be very grateful for that. Because they taught me in rehab, right? They said if you change your perception, you can change your world, because your mentality will create the reality for which you live in. And therefore your defects can become your assets with that shift of perception. So now the very same thing that was killing me, drugs and alcohol, now not only provides me life, right? Because that took me through that dark journey to meet my higher power, which now, right, because addicts, alcoholics, all that means is we're defined by nature. We hate authority. We'll never conform unless it becomes our idea. I just lived this life through attraction rather than promotion. Why? Because you tell us what we need to do. We tell you why you need to fuck off. But all of a sudden, I see this wonderful life that you live that does not consist of a drink or a drug. And I say, if you can do it, there's no reason why I can't. Can you help me? And now it's become your idea. And guess what? You're going to excel at a rapid fucking pace. Why? Because you came up with this idea. So that's what I do. I just try to live this life through attraction rather than promotion.
I love that you said that because I thought I freaking knew everything. I thought I had this, I had everything under control. I was fine. I was not fine. Now I'm like tattooing over scars over here.
Sure.
But it's crazy how life comes full circle for me. I never thought I would help an addict, and I never even thought I was one. I was so delusional and I was in such a fog that I didn't think I was a heroin addict, and I had tracks all the way up and down my arms. But I'm like, I'm in control of it. I can stop whenever I want to. I'm fine. I was completely completely wrong, completely delusional, and had no fucking idea what I was doing. So
Yeah.
I love that you said we need to get out of our own way, because I would have gotten it so much sooner if I just took a step outside of my own ego and said, you need this help. So I love everything you
Well,
said.
again, because all ego is easing God out. And if you refer back to what I said earlier in this interview, the only way I had a dog in this fight of lifting me of the obsession or ridding me of the desire of a drink or a drug was having that spiritual experience. So when Brandon is remaining Brandon's God, I cannot understand for the life of me why I continuously shove this needle in my arm. Right? Why? Because ego's running rampant. And all I've done is Brandon's God. I've eased God out. Therefore, there's no spiritual experience. Therefore, I cannot lift the obsession or rid me of the desire to continuously get high, which my brain tells me makes sense. So until I had that spiritual experience, which for me came through the 12 steps, then I had a chance. All because I know that I don't know.
Literally. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me for a little bit today.
This is
I'm
great.
so proud of you. I love following your journey on Instagram. You're just such an inspiration. And if you guys have not read Dream Seller, it's so good. You actually have a second book, don't you?
Yeah, we just finished it, literally. It's in the hands of the proofreader. When I get home Friday, I will have my copy of the sequel to that book you're holding in your hand.
I can't wait.
And that book is titled The Streets of Baltimore, and it picks up where that one left off. So excited. My co-author, Joe Frantz, which this is pretty big shoes to fill, swears that this next book is better than the book that's in your hand, which I find hard to believe.
This could be my desert island book. Like, I could be stranded on a desert island and be happy with this, and I never reread books. I get bored, but I've read this 3 times.
Yeah, I only read autobiographies, and go figure, I love things about drugs and alcohol, so 99% of them have to do with an addiction.
Yeah, me too.
And I love that book. I'm not saying because it's my book, but I genuinely loved it, and I love other like addiction books, but that book did it for me, and I don't know how we can top that. But my co-author Joe Frantz swears that this one far surpasses that one. So I will know Friday when I get home and I have the copy in my hand, and you guys will know September. September is the release for it.
I can't wait until September.
Yeah. I know. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, congratulations on everything that you are doing. And again, thank you so much for hanging out with me for a little bit. Hope you have a really good day, and I will continue to follow your journey.
Thank you so much. Thanks for thinking of me to be a part of this.